Imagine waking up in a place you've never seen before. No memories of it, no experience, no lessons from your parents, nothing. Then, a figure appears in the distance. You don't know its name. You don't know what it wants. And yet every nerve in your body screams the same command: run. That is the reality for almost every wild animal on Earth. Whether it's a deer standing in an open meadow, a fox crossing a frozen field, or a whale surfacing in the middle of the Pacific, one pattern repeats with astonishing consistency. The moment a human enters the equation, their bodies begin preparing for the worst. What's remarkable is that many of these animals have never encountered a human before. Some are born in isolated habitats. Others grow up where people rarely exist. Yet their response is almost immediate. Distance increases. Heart rate accelerates. Muscles tighten. Escape becomes the only objective.
It's as if evolution has written a warning into their nervous system long before they ever have the chance to learn it. And scientists have spent decades trying to understand why. Because this reaction isn't simply fear. It's something much deeper. It's a survival program running beneath conscious thought. Every second, a wild animal's brain performs thousands of tiny calculations. How fast is that object moving? Is it approaching directly? Where are its eyes looking? Can I escape? These decisions happen so quickly that the animal never experiences them as choices. They're automatic. Long before awareness catches up, the body has already decided whether to flee. Researchers studying mammals, birds, reptiles, and even fish have repeatedly found that humans trigger stronger avoidance responses than almost any other predator. Sometimes stronger than wolves, sometimes stronger than bears, even stronger than predators that naturally hunt the species. Why? Because throughout history, humans became something no ecosystem had ever experienced before. We weren't the fastest hunters. We weren't the strongest. We weren't the largest. But we never stopped. Across thousands of generations, animals that treated humans as the greatest possible threat simply survived more often. The result wasn't a lesson passed from parent to child. It became something written into biology itself, an invisible inheritance, one that still shapes encounters today. But this ancient program reveals something even stranger when an animal can no longer escape.
Picture a young deer caught in a wire fence. At first, it pulls. Then it twists. The harder it struggles, the tighter the wire becomes. Every instinct tells it to keep fighting. Every failed attempt convinces its body that death is getting closer. Inside, a biological emergency unfolds. Stress hormones flood the bloodstream. Adrenaline surges through every muscle. The heart races so violently that it risks damaging itself. Energy reserves disappear in minutes. From the outside, the animal looks terrified. From the inside, its body believes it's living through the final moments of its life. Wildlife veterinarians often describe this state as complete physiological overload. Everything unnecessary shuts down. Digestion. Rest. Curiosity.
Even normal perception begins to narrow. The brain stops exploring possibilities. It focuses on one single objective: survive. Studies on trapped hoofed mammals have shown that stress hormone levels during entrapment can exceed those measured in animals suffering severe traumatic injuries. Not because the injuries are worse, but because the brain interprets being unable to escape as one of the most catastrophic situations nature can produce. To evolution, being trapped almost always meant one thing: a predator was coming, and there would be nowhere left to run. That's why rescue can look so confusing. Someone arrives carrying tools instead of weapons. They move slowly. They speak softly. But the trapped animal doesn't see any of that. It sees a large predator walking directly toward a helpless body. Exactly the sequence its ancestors have feared for millions of years. Which explains one of the most heartbreaking sights wildlife rescuers encounter. The closer they get, the harder the animal fights. Its movements become violent. Its breathing grows frantic. Sometimes it injures itself trying to escape. From our perspective, help has arrived. From the animal's perspective, the worst possible moment has finally come. Everything in its nervous system predicts the same ending. This is when predators kill. And then, something happens that almost no one expects. Not every time, not with every species, but often enough that researchers around the world have taken notice. Without warning, the struggle stops. Not because the animal has run out of strength, not because it has given up. The change is different. Its muscles relax. Its breathing slows. Its eyes stop searching for escape. And instead, they lock onto the human. Not with panic, with attention. For just a few moments, the oldest survival program on Earth seems to hesitate. The question is, what could possibly make millions of years of instinct pause? For a long time, wildlife biologists assumed these moments were nothing more than exhaustion. An animal struggles. It burns through its energy. Eventually, it simply can't fight anymore. Simple. Except the evidence kept refusing to fit that explanation.
Rescuers began noticing the same pattern across completely different species, in different environments, on different continents. The transition wasn't gradual. It happened almost like a switch. One moment, the animal was throwing every ounce of strength into escaping. The next, it became strangely still. Not limp, not unconscious. Watching. That distinction would become incredibly important, because an exhausted animal doesn't carefully follow every movement around it. These animals did. Their eyes tracked hands instead of faces. They seemed to study the object being manipulated, the snare, the net, the wire, as though something about the situation no longer matched the prediction their brains had been making just seconds before. And that raises an extraordinary possibility. Maybe the animal isn't recognizing a rescuer.
Maybe it's recognizing that this isn't behaving like a predator at all. Evolution is remarkably good at recognizing patterns. A wolf doesn't analyze every rustle in the grass. A gazelle doesn't calculate probabilities before it runs. Instead, the brain compares what it sees to millions of years of inherited templates. Predator approaching quickly. Danger. Eyes fixed on the body. Danger. Sudden acceleration. Danger. The response is almost instantaneous. But humans performing a rescue violate nearly every one of those ancient rules. Instead of rushing forward, they slow down. Instead of chasing the animal, they kneel beside it. Instead of attacking the body, they focus on the trap. Their hands move with precision rather than violence. Their attention is fixed on the rope, the wire, the net, not the animal itself.
From the perspective of an evolved nervous system, it's a sequence that simply doesn't exist in the historical record. The brain searches for the closest match. Predator? Not quite. Competitor? Doesn't fit. Scavenger? Wrong behavior. Nothing matches. And when no known pattern explains what's happening, the fear response can briefly lose its anchor. Researchers sometimes describe this as a suspension of the threat response. Not because the animal suddenly trusts the human, but because its survival program has encountered something it was never designed to classify. One of the most famous examples unfolded off the California coast in the winter of 2005. A humpback whale had become hopelessly entangled in commercial fishing gear nearly 20 miles offshore. Heavy ropes wrapped around her mouth, her pectoral fins, her tail. Dozens of crab traps hung beneath her body like anchors. Each movement tightened the lines even further. She wasn't just trapped. She was carrying hundreds of pounds of dead weight while struggling to keep her blowhole above the surface. Every breath required enormous effort. By the time rescuers arrived, she had been fighting for hours. No one knew how she would react. A humpback whale can weigh close to 50 tons. A single strike from its tail can generate enough force to destroy a small boat. The divers understood the risk. Entering the water meant placing themselves within reach of one of the largest animals on the planet, an animal in extreme distress. Ordinarily,
That's exactly the situation wildlife professionals try to avoid. Yet they had no other choice. Carrying curved knives, the team slipped into the water. Then something happened that none of them expected. The whale stopped struggling. Almost immediately. She floated quietly at the surface while divers swam beneath her massive body, cutting through layers of rope one section at a time. Every movement had to be deliberate. One mistake could send the whale into panic. One frightened sweep of her tail could be fatal. But the panic never came. Instead, witnesses described something astonishing. As the rescue progressed, the whale appeared to reposition herself. She rolled slightly, extended a fin, shifted her body, not dramatically, just enough to expose another section of tangled rope, again and again. It was as if the largest participant in the rescue had become an active partner in it. No one can say with certainty what she understood. Scientists are careful about drawing conclusions from a single event.
But everyone present agreed on one thing. Her behavior didn't resemble the frantic responses typically seen in severely entangled whales. Something about this encounter was different. The same mystery has appeared on land. In Yellowstone National Park, researchers once encountered a gray wolf caught in a steel leg-hold trap. At first, the animal behaved exactly as biology predicted. It lunged, snarled, snapped at anyone who came close. Its body was operating in pure survival mode. Every movement screamed the same message: stay away. One member of the research team tried something unusual. Instead of continuing to advance, he stopped. Completely. He didn't reach for the trap. He didn't wave his arms. He simply remained still, maintaining calm, steady eye contact. Minutes passed. Nothing changed. Then, the wolf's posture softened. The lunging stopped. Its breathing slowed. Instead of attacking, it sat down. For several moments, human and wolf simply looked at one another. Not as hunter and prey, not as rivals. Just watching. Only then did the researchers move toward the trap. This time, the wolf didn't resist. Its eyes followed their hands as they worked the mechanism. When the jaws finally released, the wolf stood motionless. It looked back once, then disappeared silently into the trees. Researchers avoid describing moments like this in emotional language. Words like gratitude or understanding are scientifically difficult to prove. Instead, they use more careful terms: a disruption in threat processing, a suspension of defensive behavior, a temporary breakdown of expected predator recognition. Those phrases may sound clinical, but they point towards something remarkable. Sometimes, survival isn't driven by instinct alone. Sometimes, instinct waits for new information. And nowhere does that possibility become more intriguing than with one of the most intelligent animals ever to walk the earth.
Because elephants don't just survive, they remember. Memory changes everything. For most animals, survival is about reacting to the present. For elephants, survival is also about carrying the past. They remember faces for decades. They recognize the voices of distant family members after years apart. They can distinguish between human groups that pose a threat and those that do not. Some even alter their routes based on experiences that happened long before the youngest members of the herd were born. Their world isn't just instinct, it's history.
Which makes what happens during certain rescues even more difficult to explain. In Kenya, wildlife teams have documented young elephants trapped in deep mud pits after failed attempts to cross rivers or watering holes. The rescue is rarely quick. Heavy machinery is often needed. Ropes are lowered. People shout instructions over the sound of engines. For hours, the elephant struggles against exhaustion while strangers surround it. Eventually, the ground gives way. The animal climbs free. From an evolutionary perspective, this should be the end of the encounter. Run. Put distance between yourself and the source of danger. Rejoin the herd. Instead, some elephants do something unexpected.
They stop. They turn back. Then they slowly extend the most sensitive part of their entire body, their trunk. To us, a trunk is simply a nose. To an elephant, it is far more than that. It is a hand, a voice, a nose, a tool, an instrument capable of astonishing precision. Packed with tens of thousands of muscles and an extraordinary network of nerve endings, it allows an elephant to explore the world with incredible detail. When an elephant deliberately rests its trunk against another elephant, it isn't a meaningless gesture. It is gathering information, reassuring, greeting, comforting. So when rescued elephants gently place their trunks against the hands or arms of the people who freed them and hold that contact for several quiet seconds, scientists pay attention. Not because they know exactly what it means, but because it clearly isn't random. The threat is gone. The escape route is open. Nothing forces the elephant to remain. Yet for reasons we still don't fully understand, some do.
This is where science becomes unusually humble. It's tempting to tell ourselves a simple story. The elephant was saying thank you. The whale understood she had been rescued. The wolf recognized kindness. They're beautiful ideas. They may even be true. But good science demands something more difficult: evidence. And evidence has limits. Researchers can measure cortisol flooding through the bloodstream. They can monitor heart rate. They can map neural activity. They can compare behavior across hundreds of observations. But there is one place their instruments cannot reach: experience. No scan can tell us what it feels like to be a humpback whale suspended beneath hundreds of pounds of rope. No sensor can reveal what passed through the mind of a wolf staring silently at the people who had just released it. Consciousness is visible only from the inside.
And every animal experiences that hidden world alone. Still, modern neuroscience has made one discovery that keeps this mystery alive. For years, scientists believed certain specialized brain cells existed only in humans and our closest primate relatives. These are spindle neurons, cells associated with rapid social judgment, emotional processing, and navigating complex relationships. Then researchers found them elsewhere. In elephants, in whales, species separated from us by tens of millions of years of evolution. Different bodies, different lives, yet remarkably similar neural machinery for processing social interactions. This doesn't prove whales feel gratitude. It doesn't prove elephants understand human intentions the way we do. But it does tell us something profound. The architecture for sophisticated social cognition evolved more than once. Nature found multiple paths toward complex minds. That realization changes the question entirely. Instead of asking whether animals think like us, we begin asking how many different ways intelligence can exist. Perhaps the most remarkable part of every rescue happens long before the ropes are cut. It happens in a fraction of a second. The moment fear hesitates. For millions of years, evolution rewarded one simple rule. See the predator? Escape. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Those individuals survived.
The cautious became ancestors. The reckless disappeared. That ancient rule is still alive today in every racing heartbeat and every desperate attempt to flee. And yet, every so often, an animal encounters something evolution never prepared it for. A predator that doesn't attack. Hands that remove the trap instead of tightening it. A presence that brings safety instead of death. For a brief moment, one of nature's oldest algorithms encounters an impossible problem. The prediction fails. The pattern breaks.
And in that tiny space between fear and certainty, something extraordinary becomes possible. Maybe one day science will answer what happens in those moments. New imaging technologies are improving every year.
Researchers are building long-term behavioral databases for elephants, whales, wolves, and countless other species. Artificial intelligence is beginning to detect behavioral patterns too subtle for humans to notice. The evidence will grow. Some mysteries will become clearer. Others may only become deeper. But perhaps the most important lesson isn't about whether animals feel gratitude. It's about recognizing how much of their inner lives still lies beyond our reach. For centuries, humans assumed intelligence belonged almost exclusively to us. Again and again, nature has responded with quiet contradiction. Crows solve puzzles. Octopuses escape locked containers. Dolphins invent games. Elephants mourn. Whales teach songs that spread across entire oceans. Every decade, another certainty falls away. Not because animals are becoming more intelligent, because we're finally learning how little we understood them. The next time you see a video of a wild animal being freed from a net, or a fence, or a trap, watch carefully. Not for the dramatic escape. Watch the pause. The moment when terror gives way to stillness.
No one can say exactly what passes through the mind of that animal. Maybe it's confusion. Maybe it's calculation. Maybe it's something we don't yet have words for. Science can measure the heartbeat. It can measure the hormones. It can measure the movement. But there is one thing it cannot measure: what it is like to be another living mind. And perhaps that's why these rescues continue to captivate us. Not because they prove animals think like humans, but because they remind us that every pair of eyes looking back from the wild contains a world we may never fully understand. And sometimes, the greatest discovery isn't finding the answer. It's realizing that another creature has been asking questions of us all along.